What happens when one of Hollywood's most fearless action stars faces off with the most combative host on daytime television? When Jason Statham, calm and composed, sits across from Joy Behar, the queen of sharp tongues, and realizes this isn't an interview, it's a public ambush. Within minutes, the interview turns into open combat, not with fists, but with words sharp enough to cut through steel. What started as a chat becomes a televised showdown that no one in that studio or watching at home will ever forget. Trust me, this talk show won't disappoint you. It'll be worth every second of your time. The studio lights burned bright, that signature golden glow of the view that usually made everything feel warm and inviting. The cameras panned across the panel. Whoopi in her calm authority, Sarah with her practiced smile, Sunny looking perfectly poised. And then there was Joy Behar, arms crossed, smirk already loaded like a weapon. The audience clapped as Whoopi leaned toward the camera. Please welcome one of Hollywood's biggest action stars, Jason Statham. Jason stepped onto the stage with that quiet confidence only he could pull off. He gave a polite wave to the crowd, shook Whoopi's hand, nodded to Sarah and Sunny, and finally looked at Joy. She didn't smile. Neither did he. The applause faded. Whoopi started soft. Jason, good to have you back on The View. Tell us about your new film. It looks like another wild ride. Jason smiled, just barely. Yeah, it's called Retribution Point. It's about redemption, loyalty, and fighting for the people you love. A lot of action, sure, but also a lot of heart. Before he could continue, Joy cut in. Heart, she said with a small laugh. I mean, come on, Jason. Let's be real here. Your movies, they're basically violence on repeat. Guns, fights, car chases. They're just violence for dumb thrill seekers, aren't they? Do you ever plan on doing something that actually matters? The air left the room. Even Whoopi blinked, caught off guard by how early Joy had decided to swing. Sarah shifted in her seat, glancing nervously toward the producers. Jason's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Not anger yet, but warning. He leaned back in his chair, voice even and measured. If loyalty, sacrifice, and courage don't matter, Joy, then maybe the problem isn't with the films. Maybe it's the lens you're watching them through. Joy tilted her head, smiling like a cat cornering a mouse. Oh, please. Let's not romanticize explosions and car crashes. Your characters spend 2 hours beating people up. That's not courage. That's testosterone with a budget. Jason let out a short breath through his nose, almost a laugh. You know, Joy, I've worked with stunt teams, veterans, real fighters, people who put their lives on the line to tell these stories. You might call that mindless violence. I call it respect for the people who fight real battles every day. The audience murmured. Some clapped, others just watched, wide-eyed. Joy wasn't backing down. She leaned forward, elbows on the table. Respect? You think showing boys that problems get solved with fists is respect? That's the same garbage message that keeps toxic masculinity alive and well. Jason's tone stayed calm, but the edge in it was unmistakable now. Toxic masculinity, he repeated slowly. That's an interesting phrase coming from someone who's made a career out of tearing people down on national TV. The panel froze. Whoopi opened her mouth, then closed it again. Sarah pretended to fix her microphone. Joy's eyebrows shot up. Excuse me? Jason nodded once, steady. You say my movies send the wrong message. But what message do you think it sends when you humiliate people for a living? The words hit like a right hook. Clean, precise, and impossible to dodge. Joy's smile tightened. I don't humiliate people. I hold them accountable. Jason leaned in slightly, voice low but cutting. No, you confuse cruelty with courage. There's a difference. The air thickened. You could almost hear the hum of the cameras, the shifting of the crew, the audience caught between gasp and disbelief. Whoopi tried to jump in. All right, let's... Jason raised a hand gently. It's fine, Whoopi. Let her finish. He looked back at Joy. Go on, Joy. Tell me what you think my responsibility is. Since you seem to know my job better than I do, Joy blinked, then scoffed. I think actors like you, with all your fame and influence, could do something meaningful. Something that doesn't glorify violence or make men think empathy is weakness? Jason smiled. But this time, it wasn't polite. It was razor sharp. You mean like talking down to millions of viewers who enjoy what I do? That kind of empathy? Joy's smirk faltered for just a second. He'd landed another blow, and this one stung. Jason straightened in his chair, voice calm again but stronger now. Here's the thing, Joy. You call my work mindless. You say it's shallow. But those same movies, they give people a couple of hours of hope. They remind folks that standing up for what's right still matters. And if that's meaningless to you, maybe that says more about you than it does about me. Then there was silence, long, heavy silence. And Jason leaned back again, folding his hands, and said quietly, You wanted something that matters. Now you've got it. Whoopi exhaled softly, breaking the moment with a nervous laugh. Well, this is going to be one interview people remember. And she wasn't wrong. The silence that followed hung thick in the air. The kind of silence that only comes before something breaks. Joy Behar leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on Jason like a predator circling its prey. She'd been embarrassed once on live TV before, and she wasn't about to let it happen again. You glorify macho nonsense, she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the tension. You teach boys that being a man means breaking bones, not boundaries. You feed the same toxic image that makes men think emotions are weakness. Do you ever stop to think about the damage that does? Jason's smile disappeared. His jaw tightened. The warmth that had flickered in his tone earlier was gone. He stared straight at her, steady, unblinking. Funny, he said quietly. You've built a career breaking people, not bones. A few audience members gasped. Whoopi glanced toward the control room, but no one dared to cut to commercial. Joy blinked hard. Excuse me. Jason didn't blink. He leaned slightly forward, his voice calm but heavy, the kind of tone that lands like a punch even when it's whispered. You don't interview people, Joy. You dissect them. You sit behind a desk and call it journalism when it's really just cruelty with commercial breaks. For the first time, Joy hesitated. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The words hung there, echoing, while the rest of the panel froze. Sarah Haynes shifted in her chair, nervous. Maybe we should... Jason held up a hand, never taking his eyes off Joy. No, let's keep going. She wants honesty. Let's be honest, Joy's smirk returned. Smaller now, tighter. Oh, I can handle honesty, she said. I just didn't realize you were so sensitive. Jason gave a short laugh, the kind that isn't funny at all. Sensitive? Number. Just tired. Tired of people like you pretending cruelty is courage. You throw words like accountability and journalism around, but what you really mean is ratings. You don't challenge people, you bait them. Joy's cheeks flushed red. I ask tough questions, Jason. That's my job. Then ask one, he shot back. So far, all I've heard are insults dressed up as opinions. The tension snapped. The audience shifted in their seats, unsure if they were supposed to clap or hold their breath. Joy's voice rose. Oh, come on! You're an actor, not a philosopher. Don't talk to me about opinions. You sell fantasy violence and call it art. Jason leaned in, voice low, eyes locked on hers. And you sell outrage and call it intellect. Joy's lips parted. Not for a comeback, but out of shock. Whoopi mouthed something to the producers off camera, but Jason wasn't finished. You think you're fearless because you say what others won't, he said. But there's a difference between being fearless and being reckless. One earns respect. The other just burns bridges. The line hit her like a body blow. She blinked fast, trying to mask the crack in her composure. But Jason saw it. Everyone did. He leaned back again, tone soft but cutting. You know what's funny? You talk about responsibility, about influence, but you've spent years using yours to tear down everyone who sits in this chair. Maybe that's why so few come back twice. The room froze. Even the audience fell dead silent. Joy's smirk vanished completely. Whoopi finally stepped in, her voice a mix of concern and warning. All right, guys, maybe we take a breath. But Jason shook his head. No need, Whoopi. I'm breathing just fine. He turned back to Joy, eyes cold now. It's her that's choking on her own double standards. Joy straightened, trying to regain control, but her voice betrayed her. Shaky, defensive. You really think you can come on my show and talk to me like that? Jason smiled faintly. No, Joy. I didn't come here to talk to you. He paused, letting the silence bite. I came here to remind you what a real conversation sounds like. The audience didn't move. No one spoke. The only sound was the faint buzz of the studio lights. The studio felt different now. Colder, sharper. Every camera stayed locked on Jason and Joy, as if the rest of the panel had vanished. Whoopi's hands were folded tightly, Sarah's forced smile had completely faded, and Sunny was staring straight ahead, pretending to take notes. Everyone knew this wasn't just a heated interview anymore. This was personal. Joy crossed her arms, voice dripping with disdain. You know what your movies represent, Jason? Toxic masculinity, men who can't talk about their feelings, so they just punch their way through life. You sell that poison to young boys and call it empowerment. Jason's eyes darkened. He didn't move, but his silence felt louder than her words. Then calmly, too calmly, he leaned forward. Toxic masculinity? He repeated, his voice low, steady. That's rich coming from someone who confuses hostility with honesty. The words hit like glass shattering. Joy blinked fast, pretending to laugh, but it didn't land. Jason didn't break eye contact. His voice hardened, every syllable clean and deliberate. You're not challenging ideas, Joy. You're hunting for humiliation. That's not courage. That's cruelty dressed up as conviction. The crowd was silent. No applause, no gasps this time. Just a quiet, collective tension that filled every corner of the room. Joy straightened, trying to regain her footing. I hold people accountable, she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Jason didn't flinch. No, you hold grudges, he said, his tone slicing through the air. You twist words for applause. You mistake arrogance for intellect. You don't ask questions to learn. You ask them to win. Her cheeks flushed crimson. The camera zoomed in slightly, catching the tightness in her jaw. Joy fired back, voice shaking. Oh, please. You just don't like being challenged by a woman who's not afraid to call you out. Jason smiled, faint but dangerous. No, Joy. I don't mind being challenged. I mind being misrepresented by someone who mistakes provocation for purpose. The tension was suffocating. Even the audience had stopped moving. He continued, voice quieter now, but somehow heavier. You talk about responsibility like you invented the word. But you've built a platform out of tearing down anyone who doesn't fit your version of what's acceptable. You call it speaking truth to power. I call it bullying with better lighting. Joy's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her face hardened, but the color drained slightly. Jason didn't stop. You accuse me of glorifying violence, but what you do every day is emotional violence. You humiliate, interrupt, twist. The only difference is, I do my fighting on screen. You do yours under studio lights. The audience stirred. Soft murmurs rippled across the seats. Joy tried to laugh it off, but it sounded brittle. Oh, that's cute, she said. Now you're a victim? Jason's tone was calm, but his eyes said otherwise. No, just a man who's tired of watching people like you confuse cruelty for conversation. You think being loud makes you right. It doesn't. It just makes you loud. Joy blinked, her smirk faltering. For the first time, she looked unsure. Jason leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable. You wanted honesty, Joy? This is it. You've spent so long attacking people that you've forgotten what dialogue sounds like. It's not shouting. It's not mocking. It's listening. The last word landed hard, not shouted, but dropped like a weight. No one spoke, and no one dared. And then Joy straightened in her chair, trying to regain control, her voice rising just enough to sound authoritative again. You know, Jason, she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Actors like you have choices. You could make art, not explosions. You could do something meaningful instead of another testosterone parade in slow motion. Jason tilted his head slightly, studying her like a chess player, deciding whether to end the game in one move or drag it out. His response came quiet but sharp. Art isn't defined by who claps for it in New York, Joy. It's defined by who it reaches. Maybe that's why you've been talking to yourself for years. The line landed hard, even Whoopi's eyebrows lifted slightly, and a ripple of laughter came from somewhere in the audience before quickly dying. No one wanted to be caught reacting. Joy blinked, her mouth parting as if to reply, but Jason's stare held her there. She finally leaned forward again, voice tight. "My show sparks conversation," she said defensively. Jason didn't hesitate. "No, it sparks conflict. And the only person who wins is the one loudest, not the one right." That shut her down. The room was still, all oxygen sucked out by the precision of his words. It wasn't a shout, it wasn't a rant. It was a surgical dismantling. Joy tried to force a laugh, but it came out brittle. "You really think you're smarter than the people who criticize you, don't you?" Jason didn't blink. "No," he said evenly. "I just know the difference between criticism and condescension. One helps you grow. The other just reminds you who's miserable." For the first time since he'd walked onto the set, Joy had nothing ready. No quip, no deflection, no backup from her co-hosts. Her jaw tensed as she looked down at her notes, the paper trembling slightly in her hand. Jason leaned back, calm again. "You said I could make art," he added. "Here's the truth. I already do. You just don't recognize it because it doesn't fit your version of intellectual. You want to know the difference between us, Joy? I make things people enjoy. You make things people argue about." The camera caught Joy's face tightening, the smile gone, her expression unreadable but furious beneath the surface. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should move on to—" Jason turned slightly toward her, still composed. "No worries, Sarah. We're just getting started." He looked back at Joy, eyes calm but dangerous. "You call yourself fearless, but fear isn't what keeps people silent around you. It's exhaustion, that one hit like a knockout." The audience exhaled, the kind of sound that comes when everyone realizes they've just witnessed something irreversible. Joy sat perfectly still, lips pressed tight, as Jason leaned back again, a faint, cold smirk flickering across his face. The war of words was no longer even, and everyone in the room could see who was winning. The air inside the studio had grown heavy, too heavy. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate before moving. Whoopi leaned forward, her tone careful but firm, trying to pull things back from the edge. All right, let's take a breath, people. We've got a lot of ground to cover. Let's not make headlines for the wrong reasons, yeah." Jason exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing just enough to look composed again. He nodded politely, forcing a brief smile toward Whoopi. "Fair enough," he said. The tension in his voice was still there, buried just beneath the surface. Joy, however, wasn't done. She sat back, letting the quiet settle, that familiar smirk creeping back across her face. She'd lost ground. But in her mind, she still had control. The audience relaxed slightly, assuming the storm had passed. It hadn't. It was only holding its breath. For a few seconds, the conversation drifted back to lighter topics. Stunt work, training, a story from the set of Jason's latest film. Laughter flickered here and there, but it was nervous, forced. Every glance, every pause between Jason and Joy still carried static. Then Joy leaned in again, her tone softer now but laced with venom. "You know what your films teach, Jason?" she asked, voice almost casual. "That strength is violence. That men can't be vulnerable. That the only way to solve anything is to hit harder." Jason froze. Then he turned his head slightly, eyes locking on her. His expression didn't change, but his voice dropped. Deeper, sharper, colder. "And you know what your show teaches, Joy," he said evenly. "That compassion is weakness, and cruelty is currency." The words hung in the air like smoke. No one moved. No one even breathed. Joy blinked, the smirk faltering just slightly. For the first time, she looked unsure. Jason leaned forward, his voice steady, his eyes unwavering. "You hide behind the word honesty, But what you really mean is humiliation. You say you speak truth to power, but you only ever punch down. That's not bravery, Joy. That's bitterness. Her face tightened, but she didn't speak. The silence stretched. Whoopi glanced toward the control room again, clearly signaling for a commercial. But the producers didn't dare cut. Not yet. Everyone could feel it. Something bigger was about to break. Jason sat back in his chair again, voice quieter now, but every word razor sharp. You say my movies make men afraid to show emotion, but watching you right now, I think we've all learned there's more than one way to hide behind anger. Joy blinked again, eyes flickering, her grip tightening on the desk. The crowd didn't clap. They didn't gasp. They just stared. The fragile calm that Whoopi had built cracked like glass under pressure. Joy's voice came back louder, faster, filled with panic disguised as confidence. You think you can sit here and lecture me about decency? You make millions selling violence to kids. Jason didn't answer. He stood up slowly, the movement deliberate, unhurried. And suddenly his presence dominated the whole frame. The studio lights caught the edge of his face as his shadow fell across the table. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but every word hit like a blow. You want to talk about toxic behavior? He said, eyes locked on her. Look in the mirror. You've turned conversation into combat and call it courage. Joy tried to cut him off, but he didn't stop. You don't listen. You wait for your turn to swing. You don't debate ideas. You dismantle people. And you've done it for so long, you think it's normal. Her voice trembled now, though she tried to sound defiant. You think you're better than me? Jason's answer was quiet, almost gentle, which somehow made it hurt even more. No, he said, just better than what you've become. The line hit like a gut punch. Joy blinked hard, her jaw tightening, trying to steady herself. Jason stepped closer, lowering his tone but sharpening his words. I've risked my body, my safety to entertain people, he said. Every stunt, every fight, I've bled for it. You've risked nothing but decency, and somehow, that's worse. The studio went dead silent. Even Whoopi didn't move. Joy's lips parted like she wanted to fire back, but no words came. Jason just stood there, steady, calm, unshakable. The man who had walked in to promote a film now standing as the one rewriting the script on live TV. Joy's voice finally cracked through the silence, sharp and shaking. At least I stand for something. Jason didn't back down. He stepped closer, just enough for the camera to catch the intensity in his eyes. Standing for something doesn't mean shouting louder, he said. It means not losing your soul while you do it. He pointed toward the camera, not raising his voice but making every word land with precision. This, right here, is what happens when ego replaces empathy. When the platform becomes more important than the people. Joy's face was flushed, her breathing uneven. She slammed a hand on the desk. You can't walk out on me. This is my show. Jason turned halfway toward her, a faint, cold smile crossing his face. Then maybe, he said softly, start acting like you deserve it. He unhooked his mic, the soft click echoing louder than any word spoken that morning. He paused for a beat, one last look at her, then straight into the camera. You called my movies mindless, he said, voice quiet, steady, final. But today you showed America what true mindlessness looks like, arrogance without accountability. He laid the mic on the table, nodded once toward Whoopi, Sarah, and Sunny, then walked off. The cameras kept rolling, catching the moment Joy Behar froze, lips parted, eyes blank, hands trembling against her cue cards. No music, no applause, no outro, just silence. The kind that follows when someone finally says what everyone else was too afraid to. Jason Statham was gone, and for the first time in her career, Joy Behar had nothing left to say. If you enjoyed watching this confrontation unfold, the calm before the storm, the words that cut deeper than punches, make sure you don't miss what comes next. Subscribe now for more explosive celebrity showdowns, unfiltered talk show moments, and the raw truth behind Hollywood's most shocking clashes. Drop your thoughts below. Was Jason right to walk out, or did Joy finally meet her match?